Good morning, everyone. David here, and we're reading Psalm 31 today. When you have the time, I encourage you to read all of it. But today we're just going to read a few sections. It's an important psalm because the prophet Jonah quotes from it, the prophet Jeremiah quotes from it, and of course, Jesus quotes verse 5 when he was suffering on the cross. The two themes that stood out to me as I read this are highlighted in verses 9 through 13 and then in verses 14 through 19. So let's look at those two themes now. First, in verses 9 through 13, we see the hardness of life. The hardness of life. Let's read it. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted from grief, my soul and my body also. For my life is spent with sorrow, and my years with sighing. My strength fails because of my iniquity, and my bones waste away. Because of all my adversaries, I have become a reproach, especially to my neighbors, and an object of dread to my acquaintances. Those who see me in the street flee from me. I have been forgotten like one who is dead. I have become like a broken vessel. For I hear the whispering of many, terror on every side, as they scheme together against me, as they plot to take my life. Notice just the words that David uses here. He uses the word distress, grief. His life is spent with sorrow, full of sighing, iniquity. His bones are wasting away. He's become a reproach. And then he describes himself as a broken vessel. Surely you can hear the hardness of life that David is describing there. But David goes on in this psalm to talk about a second theme, and that's what we see in verses 14 and following. Verse 14, but I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. Rescue me from the hand of my enemies and from my persecutors. Make your face shine on your servant. Save me in your steadfast love. And skip down to verse 19. Oh, how abundant is your goodness, which you have stored up for those who fear you and work for those who take refuge in you, in the sight of the children of mankind. Two words to highlight there. You can see that David remembers the steadfast love of God, and then he also remembers the goodness of God. And earlier in this psalm, David again had described God as being his refuge, his rock, and his redeemer. So we see these two themes in the psalm, the hardness of life and the love of God. Now some think that one, the hardness of life, disproves the other, the goodness of God. But the psalmist denies neither one. He affirms both are true. Hardship, suffering, isolation, and pain. It's not an illusion in the Bible, but it's a reality. And all we have to do is to look around and we can acknowledge the hardness of life. But we also see the goodness of God here. We see him described as a refuge, a rock, and a redeemer. He's full of steadfast love. And this is not wishful thinking, but it's the truth of the Word of God. We look in his Word and we remember his goodness. And then I love how this psalm ends. Look down with me one more time at verse 24. Be strong and let your heart take courage, all you who wait for the Lord. I love how Derek Kidner, who's written a helpful book on this, comments on this verse. He says, let your heart take courage could equally be translated, he shall strengthen your heart. It does not promise an end to trouble, rather the strength to meet it. Let's remember that today.